Look, nobody's ever going to listen to Sean Hannity, but if they want to dig their hole in their own grave and they want to be fundamentally that unfair, then I say Republicans don't show up. If they refuse to make it fair, I would refuse to participate in their three-ring circus.
Yeah, these guys are making it up as they go along. I mean, look, I always back up and say this. They're trying to impeach the President of the United States 13 months prior to an election based on an anonymous whistleblower who had no firsthand knowledge, who has a bias against the President, and the person running the operation is Adam Schiff. The same Adam Schiff who didn't tell us that his staff met with this whistleblower before the complaint was even filed. The same Adam Schiff who is denying a counsel to be present from the agency when the person comes in for an interview. The same Adam Schiff who didn't even want members to be able to ask questions in those interviews. So you're right. This is a completely unfair process, made up as it goes along. And frankly, the White House's letter yesterday was so on target, so good, and they said, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. The treatment that was given to Ambassador Volker, we're not going to subject Ambassador Sondland or any more people from the State Department to that unfair treatment. You're exactly right.
Okay, so let's assume that what Byron York is saying is true. Then strategically speaking, you know, are Republicans strong enough to not fall into the trap? Because it's sort of like the minute sometimes you start explaining, it never works out. It takes too long. If it's too complicated, that the American people can't see what Schiff is doing. I mean, the transcript itself was so not damning that he had to make up a different one. The fact that he's having contact and giving advice and counsel to the whistleblower, and then lies about it, is another reason why they shouldn't go through.
Here is something that's been reported today that we should all take note of. On the whistleblower. The whistleblower, when he gets information about the call between President Trump and President Zelensky, when the whistleblower gets that information, it's been reported that he then goes right back to his office or right back to somewhere and writes a memo. Write some memo out and says in that memo it's been reported that it was frightening what was said and that it was crazy what was said. Even though we've seen the transcript and it was anything but that, the transcript of the call. This is the memo of the guy. Almost like Comey goes and writes memos after every time he has a meeting with the president. So this guy does the same thing. But guess what? He waits 18 days until he files a complaint. So he writes the memo on July 25th, the day the call happened, but he waits 18 days to file the complaint. And what does he do in the interim? What did he do in that 18 days? The first person he runs off to see is Adam Schiff's staff. So if this doesn't look a little bit fishy, I don't know what does. It's also been reported today that this indicia of political bias for a rival political candidate, it's been reported that it wasn't just a rival political candidate. This guy, this so-called whistleblower, had ties to a presidential candidate, had some kind of professional relationship with a Democrat presidential candidate. It's been reported today. So this just underscores, wait a minute, what's going on here with this whistleblower? This how this whole thing started back in July.
You're making my case, and as Cipollone wrote, he said this inquiry is constitutionally invalid. It's a violation of due process, and pointing out in the history of our nation, the House of Representatives has never attempted to launch an impeachment inquiry against the president without a majority of the House taking political accountability for that decision by voting to authorize such a dramatic constitutional step. If they're not, if they are going to abolish all due process, all constitutional norms, and all past precedent, Republicans should not participate. Period. End of sentence.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, because we know this too. If in fact there was a vote, if they went to the vote on the floor, I think it would be completely partisan, which underscores what you're saying. Would be completely partisan, and even if they took a vote to launch a formal impeachment inquiry, as has been done in the past, and that's precedent. If they did that, there's still no guarantee they would afford the rights to the minority and the rights to the White House that have always been afforded them in the past. There's still no guarantee they would follow the rules. They would still continue to be unfair.
It's a contrived, unprecedented precedent they're setting here. You know, as Cipollone, I'll go back to him, lacking the necessary authorization for a valid impeachment proceedings. And I'll tell you the other fatal defect in all of this they keep talking about fundamental fairness. There's not even a procedure that gives the president any of the most fundamental or basic protections demanded under due process. And
right to cross-examine, the whole 9 yards. You're right. You're exactly right.
Well, that's about it. All right. So what do you think Republicans are, every once in a while, do you ever get in a fight with somebody and they're trying to get in touch with you and continue the fight and you ignore them? Did you ever do that?
In this line,
by the way, Linda's an expert at it. But no, seriously, have you ever gotten in a fight with anybody and just ignore them? And you let them fight with themselves. You know what drives them nuttier than anything? When you don't fight. There's sometimes just not engaging it. This does not
You do know you're talking to a wrestler, right? Like a champion wrestler, like a coach, like somebody who knows all about it.
Well, I got it, but, listen, you have strategy here, too. Being strategic is smart. All right.
What he's saying, Congressman, is that I've ignored him so many times that he's suffering from it.
I'm busy. She's busy counting to three.
Let me just point out one more thing that they've done wrong that just bothers me. The selective leaking of parts of Ambassador Volker's testimony from last week. I mean, there were 67 pages of text messages, and they released a handful of cherry-picked ones that fit their narrative when the vast majority of Ambassador Volker's testimony was so supportive of everything we've been saying, everything the president's been saying. That's another example of Adam Schiff running this thing in entirely the wrong fashion.
Let them dig their grave. My humble advice. Jim Jordan, thank you.